Hello, and welcome to Framingham Now. I'm Jack Patrick Lewis, state representative for the majority of South Framingham, some of North Framingham, and the entire town of Ashland. On this program, we talk with elected officials, community leaders, and area activists about the current political landscape in Framingham and the future of the town that many of us call home. On today's show, I am happy to have my friend and colleague, State Representative Chris Walsh. Chris represents the 6th Middlesex district, which includes the majority of North Framingham and some of South Framingham. Chris and I, along with our friend and colleague Herman Gentile, round out Framingham's state representatives. Chris, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jack. It's great.
So let's jump right in with probably the question on everyone's minds. Who is your new barber?
So it's a pretty wonderful summer do. I have to say I did it myself the other morning after I heard that from my oncologist that I would be losing my hair. And I really had two options. It was the South Georgia dog in the middle of the summer look or this. And I opted that this was by far the better option for me. So, and that leads into that whole issue of the cancer, which I would like to address really briefly. Many of you know that I was really excited about running for mayor, but this really took this totally off the table. And that was a shame, but you just deal with what you're given and you don't worry about that too much. The issue that I have is lymphoma, and it is a sort of an interesting one. It will be a long summer of chemotherapy, a long, rather dreary summer of chemotherapy, might I point out. But at the end of it, they have some big optimism that they'll actually be able to sort of push beyond it finally, which I would adore. I'm part of a clinical trial, a brand new clinical trial. And those of you that have seen some of my Facebook posts, that's the reference to guinea pig 1. I'm the first person in this clinical trial. So the people at Dana-Farber have been great. The people of the community, I have to say, have been absolutely fabulous. And if anybody doesn't think that that is a help and a wonderful lifting of your spirits to have the people of the community come out and talk to you, it's the best. So that's the cancer.
Okay.
Let's get on to the politics.
The haircut does look great. I'm going to allow you to keep it, and I'll keep sporting my do as long as I can here. But on behalf of the community, we hope that this process continues to go well for you. And if there's anything any of us can ever do, let us know. And it's an honor to interview guinea pig number 1 on the
GP1
show today. GP1. So you're right. Let's pivot and let's talk about the hard work you're doing, because while you aren't running to be our next mayor, I'm selfishly excited that you're still going to be my colleague in the State House. And as somebody who's only been in the building for 4 months, your assistance, your help over these last couple weeks, these last couple months has been instrumental to me maneuvering the building in every way. And selfishly, I'm happy that you're going to.
Well, that was always one of the conundrums for me. I actually love this job. And I thought that it's the type of job that I enjoy so much, and I enjoy the intricacies that it wasn't something I was particularly looking at doing something else. Quite honestly, that mayoral opportunity, the getting into what I call the tooth or the fabric of the community was a really exciting idea. No question about that, because we'll talk a little bit about this later in terms of where things are going in general, but that ability to affect the community and to help the community envision where it wants to be and what it wants to be is something that I thought was not only just a huge challenge, but just a fascinating and exciting time for us. So, be it as it may, as I say, you take a look at these things and you decide what you can and cannot do, and then you move on without really worrying about it too much. And I am thrilled to still be here at the State House, still be at the State House. So
there's still a lot of work to be done.
A lot of work.
So this year you filed, I think, a couple dozen bills.
Easy.
And co-sponsored little bit more than
Yeah.
yes. And I think I'm a co-sponsor on the great majority, if not all of the bills you filed. Is there one in particular that this year you're most hopeful about and that you plan to invest more of your energy in?
We've really been trying to rectify what we think is a wrong, and I don't mean it in the big wrong, the big wrong, but 2/3 of Massachusetts people have access to housing courts for housing-related issues, for building-related issues, for all of those things that when you get into tenant-landlord disputes, contractor owner disputes, 1/3 does not. And unfortunately, we happen to live in part of the 1/3 that does not. And this always seemed to me, as an architect by trade, knowing how complicated these things are, this seemed to be an issue that needed to be addressed. They talk in the legal circles of equal access to justice, and this flies in the face of that. That if you live in a surrounding community that has access to housing court, you have a different set of things that you can access than you can if you, say, live in Framingham. And what do I mean by that? So we're really talking about mediation services. We're really talking about judges who understand code and sanitary code and building code. We're talking about volunteer lawyers, both for tenants and for landlords, that will sit down. Remember, most tenants obviously are just people who are living in a place. And most landlords, not all, but most landlords, are very small time, 1, 2, 3 properties max. Not a lot of ability to have that sort of sophistication that large landlords would have with, teams of lawyers and whatnot. So these people, by and large, need help sort of navigating this rather Byzantine situation in terms of how all of this works. So the housing court is built to help them. It is built to understand what their issues are. It is built, in many cases, to preserve tenancy. Now, before the landlords get all hot and bothered by that, what we mean is that it doesn't benefit a landlord to lose a tenant. There are tenants, I'm sure, that landlords just want to be done with. But by and large, keeping people in their houses, in their apartments, and paying rent, and so that the landlord gets that rent, therefore he can pay his mortgage and whatnot, is really the way that system works. Anytime you break that, and you bring in the legal system that starts to add all of this time in terms of waiting for people to be deposed, waiting for people to get to court, waiting for, is just a loss for the landlord, and it's a loss for the tenant. If the tenant becomes homeless, it is a huge cost to the Commonwealth. We can do a really good job, I think, by having a single system out there that really looks at this issue and says, how do we make sure that one of the true baselines of living here, which is having a roof over your head, is something that is preserved and made easier. So I think this housing court issue is a big one. Be honest with you, it's been a rough slog. It's popular in a lot of places, and then there's a little bit of pushback because of what I believe is sort of over the years small landlords feeling as if that it's weighted against them. I don't believe that's true. I think we've been making a very good case that that's not true. But I'm really hoping that as a piece of legislation, we'll be able to push this much further than we've had before. So I'm excited. I think that's a very top priority of mine.
And I'm even now more excited to be a co-sponsor on
Yeah.
this important piece of legislation that I've even just learned a little bit more about. As you were talking, I was thinking, I'm regularly asked by kids and adults, like, what does a state rep do? Like, in this world with things coming out of DC that none of us thought we'd be experiencing in this new century, what is the role of a state rep, and what are some of the issues they work on? So as you were talking, I now have one more data point to say, state reps work on everything from tax policy to school policy,
Yeah.
state butterfly to housing court, and really everything in between. But I think like you, I'm hearing from more and more constituents who are excited about a lot of the things we're doing, the 6,000 bills filed collectively among all of us. But with what's going on in DC and the fact that we're not immune here in Massachusetts to this new phenomenon, and we in Massachusetts are on a fine trajectory, but maybe not the trajectory that many people think we should be on or actually are on. Can you reflect a little on the role of the legislature in this world?
It's an interesting one. I will tell you, and honestly, I think this is politics aside. Politics, the traditional politics aside, this country is in a little bit of a free fall right now, and there was a lot of pushback this last election about the sort of major parties and all of these things. There was a lot of distrust, but having got where we are right now, we seem to be in real trouble. And I don't, in real trouble, I mean that the policies aren't binding together. We aren't seeing a lot of people saying, we love these policies. We're seeing a lot of very, very small, nattering kind of things going back and forth about this and that. This does not bode well for our democracy, and quite honestly, it does keep me up at night. It's not just the cancer drugs, but it does keep me up at night. So what I look to a certain extent at is if the federal government is really unable, and they appear to be unable to sort of get its act together and come up with a coherent policy. And I look at the state government, which, for as far as states go, Massachusetts, quite honestly, is quite a successful state. We have sort of ridden that education curve up. We have, high tech. It's a sort of it's a very successful state, and yet, at the bottom line, our numbers, our tax receipts are still declining. And that makes it, I would say, almost impossible for the state to backfill what the federal government's walking away from. I mean, the DEP, the Massachusetts DEP, can't possibly fill the shoes that the EPA was. And there are just so many things that are going to go left undone. Now, child of the 50s and 60s, when we didn't care about a lot of things. We didn't care about how much DDT we're putting into the sky, and we didn't care about how much oil we're just sort of dumping on the ground. These are things, believe me, particularly in my state right now, I'm acutely aware of. We do not want to go back there. So what do we do as a community? And I would say that it's implicit that the state, but even more so the local communities, really start picking up the slack. That we can't wait for the federal government to say, environmental issues aren't valid. The state and the local communities have got to do them themselves. The state with its, and we talk about that money problem, but the state with its money issues is kind of caught trying to fill in, but the local government is where money stops to and I say this in a funny sort of way because money matters, but money stops to matter because what we're really talking about is energizing the population for a sense of what community actually means, and getting people to realize that it's by our actions that we actually change things and not so much by waiting for someone to give us money to run a program. So I think it's implicit that we, and this is one of the reasons why I find this mayor's thing so both frustrating and exciting, is this is where I think the rubber will hit the road in our communities for a while, which is the communities have got to start paying attention to those things, not saying we're waiting for someone else to do X, Y, and Z. We need to start doing it ourselves. So that money issue at the state's a tough
Let's talk about that. I get accused of talking about taxes too often, so I'm always
Well,
happy for someone else to talk about
So,
revenue.
I have a very, we've talked about this, and I have a very odd attitude about taxes. I see it as sort of an investment club, that you invest in things that you want and you need to do and want to do. And so I, on the other hand, realize that there are people who are on very fixed incomes and feel as if they are being bled dry, and I get that. The fact is, we're a very successful state, and people are making huge amounts of money. But that money is not going back into the economy. It is going into the stock market. It's going into places where money makes money, and it's all very clever, and it's all very good. It does not advance the community at all. So this is one of the reasons why I'm such a strong supporter of a living wage, and I won't even call it a minimum wage. It's really a living wage. The money that goes back into that end of the system, the money that goes into the people who are the service people and whatnot, that is money that goes directly back into the system and that feeds the economy. We have to have that. We are being literally starved because so many people at the upper echelons are making millions and tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. That money we don't see that anymore. That's gone. We need to make sure that money is coming back in to the system where it actually is doing work for the community. So would it be better if people sort of understood this as a basic sort of economic machine and just paid people living wages? Yes. But by and large, we find that we have got to show people that it isn't the end of the world to pay people a living wage. So that people can afford housing and food and schools and clothes. Those are the things actually that come back into the community and make it work. So I'm very strongly in favor of that and think that we need to do more. Whether it's the constitutional amendment on the millionaire's tax, or whether or not it's revamping how we look at income tax in the state. There's so many ways to do this. All I know, the system basically has got a hole in it, and that is bleeding off, and it is causing our community great damage, and will continue to cause it damage. We are, as people point out time and time again, in this very much together, and I think it's time we started thinking about that and treating it that way. So,
and I think we're all still recovering from this reputation of Massachusetts being Taxachusetts. And the reality now is, as you know, our tax numbers are middle of the pack when it comes to other states.
It's been a long time since we've been there.
But this fear that even talking about increased revenue, if we're not constantly lowering taxes for people who make over $1 million a year, that we're somehow raising taxes. And I think education alone has this $1 billion hole in it. And while our kids might be doing great in tests, and we might do fine compared to other states in the union, if we don't continually invest in what we want the future to look like. You and I are on the same page on this, so it's always fun to talk.
Well, I always used to say to people, it's interesting, you take a look at places in the world, and there are places with great natural resources, and there are iron ores and all of this stuff. We don't really have that. what we have and what we're very lucky to maintain through this cycle was an education system that was non-parallel. It was fabulous. I used to say, those old SAT questions, oil is to Saudi Arabia as education is to Massachusetts. And that's what our natural resources. Our natural resources, by and large, are our people and their intelligence and their innovation. And if we mess that up, we're crazy. So we just have got to think about how that's that cycle where, you put in and you hope, if you will, at the end that it's coming back to you. That's that cycle that's so important. If we break that cycle, we're just going to be another little corner of the world without much to go. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that we're focused on it. Being vice chair of Education Committee, I know that the Education Committee is very focused on these things. Some good thinking, but it's always a question because it's a matter of where you're going to put those, not just money resources, but human capital resources and make it work. So that's great.
Excellent. So one other question. So you've been in the State House for a little over 6 years now. I think I'm going on my fifth month, so I'm still figuring out my way around the building, where the bathrooms are. Anything over the last 6+ years that's most surprised you, that stands out in your mind, that you wish you would have told yourself maybe 6 years earlier as you were maneuvering the building for the first time?
Well, I think the oddest thing about the building, and there are plenty of odd things about the building, believe me, but the oddest thing about the building is that by and large, there's so many wildly smart, energetic, directed people trying to do this. It's never been, I guess before I ran for office, I never really thought, well, what is a state rep and what do they do? And I probably fell into that category of people say, politician just tells me what I want to hear, and that's that. But it's a very complicated dynamic that goes on, that's ever changing. But if you spend time in that building and stop and talk to people from the senators, the reps, the aides, these are really incredibly smart, directed people who are really always interested in how they can advance the things that they find, whether it's education, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's environmental rights and whatnot. It's a place that never sleeps in that fashion. And from the outside, you see this big building with a gold dome, and people are like getting up and talking and maybe cutting ribbons places and whatnot. But on the inside, there's just an activity that goes on that I just find stunning, and I'm very proud to be part of that, because it's one of those things that you don't come across often in life. That Tom Santacandro, who had your position before you, used to say, Chris, the thing that amazed him was that one person can actually move the ball in the State House if they have the energy and the drive to do it. And I believe that to be true. And that's really astounding to me. So
Tom said something very similar, I think, to me the night I was elected. And I think even pushed it a little bit further, that if you're able to move just a little here in Massachusetts, in this interconnected world we live in, other states, we're constantly looking at other states and seeing what's working and what's not working. And that what seems like a little project of yours that before you were elected was maybe a hobby or a great interest, something you advocated for, you're now able to make a tangible difference that reps and aides and other states are looking to see, what's Massachusetts doing? How can we replicate that? it's clear you're still very excited about your job, and as somebody who works with you in the building, is there something that still most excites you after 6 years of representing the great folks of Framingham?
Well, actually, there are a fair number of things that really excite me. The idea that of this conversation about what community means and how it all fits together. As I said before, I'm an architect by trade, and we're kind of tinkerers. We like to have things sort of fit together nicely, and we like to be able to look at that and say, oh yes, I get that. That's a beautiful little view that has been framed by that. To me, that nature of how our communities work is really exciting. We can do a much, much, much better job of that than we have done in the past. This is, I don't really know how to express this too well right now, but we have this incredible sort of palette of community out here. And then you look at things like the downtown Framingham. You look at, which as an architect I adore. I mean, I just adore the buildings and how it all fits together. You look at the farms out in North Framingham, or some of the big properties like Bethany and South Framingham, and you look at the way this community fits together. And we need to pay a whole lot more attention to that quality of how those pieces fit together, those little joints, and how, and people complain about these all the time, so it's no surprise. Those little joints, the Knobscott Shopping Center, the Mountain Wade Shopping Center, how this fits to that. We haven't done an exceptional job, that's underlining, kind of haven't done an exceptional job of really paying attention to some of that purely physical nature of how that works and how that can really be made better. And I'm hoping that in this next go round, the state reps and whoever the mayor is and the council and whatnot can really start to talk about what are these things that are community benefits, and what does it mean to have a community benefit. So I guess that's really probably what really excites me, that kind of ability to envisioning and then working to make that vision a reality in some fashion or another. Because it's never exactly what you envision, but you can get some pretty interesting results sometimes. So.
Well, I think that's going to be where we have to leave it.
Oh,
our time went by very quickly. I'll see you around the building, I'm sure, around the community in
Definitely,
the
you
days
can't
and weeks
miss
ahead.
me.
No, but thank you so much, Chris,
Jack,
for coming on the show.
Appreciate it, really.
Wonderful and great honor to represent Framingham with you.
I just want to say what a wonderful thing it's been to have you in the building, and I fully believe that you will be one of our great state reps as we go forward. So.
Thank you so much. And I wouldn't know how to get to the bathroom or what I was doing any day if it weren't for colleagues like you. So thank you so much for everyone tuning in at home. Until next time, thank you.